Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining our Town Board work session, February 14, 2019. Would everyone please rise for the pledge and remain standing for a moment of silence for Michael Kozlowski, Coast Guard Warrant Officer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So Michael Kozlowski was a Coast Guard warrant officer who was the nephew of Mary Smith, one of our town employees. Mary works in our comptroller's office, and that was her nephew. Her twin sister Jean also used to work in the town hall in the clerk's office, and that was her stepson. Michael Kozlowski, he was fatally injured in a crane accident in Alaska just 2 weeks ago. And Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney is the chairman of the subcommittee for the Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation Committee. And he honored Michael on the floor of the House of Representatives last week. It was very, very nice, and I just wanted to do that moment of silence for him. Thank you very much. And I really don't have any comments tonight. I usually save them for the meeting, so we could go right into the work session. Our first item for discussion is a fence and shed amnesty law. So basically, I just want to have discussion tonight with the town board about a few different proposals that we can possibly have a law for. One of them is a fence and shed amnesty. There's been a lot of issues with the fence and sheds. People have multiple sheds. They have fences that are oversized, that are too close to the property line in the wrong locations, sheds that are in the wrong locations, and it's very problematic with our building department. So we were trying to figure out a way that we can put everybody into conformity from a certain time period back. And we can possibly do that by agreeing to the terms of whatever we decide as a town board to agree on, where they would be allowed, everybody would be a blanket okay for their fence or shed. So basically, I just want to get the town board's thinking of what is acceptable for timetable. Maybe, Scott, you could give us a little background on how this has become a reoccurring problem in the building department?
Well, one instance is a person might buy a home. There's an existing shed that's been there for a number of years. Now they go to take out a permit for, whatever, an addition, a deck, a pool, or whatnot, and then we go out and do our pre-site inspection. And then, we see that this shed is obviously too close to the property line. The homeowner says, well, I bought the house that way 10 years ago. Now it's a trip to the zoning board, to get a variance, to get relief. So that's, one example, and very common that something like that happens.
And the fences also, the fences are in the wrong locations, they're...
Similar circumstance,
right.
Yes.
So basically now, what is the criteria for a shed?
As far as the setbacks?
Right.
I believe it's 15-foot side and
10-foot rear.
10-foot rear, is it?
So from the rear of the property line, you have to be 10 foot in, and the side's 15. And some of them are bordering that. So obviously, if the town board wishes, this is why I'd like to have a discussion, possibly, and also the size. What about the size?
Size up to 144 square feet, as long as it meets the setbacks, does not require a permit.
So anything 12 by 12 or in that some sort of combination or under is allowed?
Correct.
Above that has to have a trip to the zoning board for a variance?
It's allowed provided it meets the setbacks.
Right.
Meets the setback. So possibly the town board can allow, if you have a shed that is 150 square feet, just, I don't know how, but...
You got state building code problems, though.
State building
If it goes over a certain amount, then the state building code requires a permit for it. So.
Okay, so if we were to give amnesty...
Permit, but not necessarily a variance, depending on...
Right. Well,
Are we focused more on the variance or the permit as well, CO as well?
well, this permit and C of O is governed by the state code, so we can't affect that. But just the details of this would be is that we would pick a date that if the shed or the fence that's not in compliance with our current law existed for whatever, 5 years or whatever, and the property owner can show that, either a bill of sale, that they bought the property and it was there when they bought the property. They can then register it with the town, and then that will be valid. They can keep it there. However, if they want to replace it, if it gets destroyed by a fire or something like that, then the new one has to comply with the law.
Even if it doesn't meet the setback requirements?
Yes, yeah.
And I'll give you another example. I just gave you one. Another example is homeowner didn't know any better, and, X number of years ago, they put the shed where they thought was a great spot in the corner, not in the way, and didn't realize that there were setback requirements. So there's another example.
This very regularly comes before the zoning board, and the zoning board is usually very generous with the relief granted, because most times it wasn't created by the current person before them, it was a prior owner, and it's a way to address it. However, once the amnesty period expires, if you haven't registered the shed, then it's the same system, so it does take an affirmative action to register it. With the fences, our code has changed several times over the last 15 years, and there's a requirement, it has to be 2 foot in from the property line. The good side has to face out to the other neighbor, et cetera. And many of the fences are there for 20 years, and they don't meet any of those requirements. It doesn't waive the height, it would still keep the same height, and unless you wanted to include that. But it would allow fence to remain if it's closer to the lot line than the law allows now.
Do we know of any issues between neighbors regarding sheds or fences that's ongoing in the town?
Well, there have been a few in the past.
Yes.
So how would this impact?
Well, those were the ones, well, we had to come to a conclusion with them. We did have an agreement, so those aren't ongoing problems. Those were problems we had, but they were resolved.
But the major fence problem we had is whether a wire-type garden fence was a decorative fence or not.
Decorative, the definition, right?
Right,
Yes.
and that was what the real controversy was over. And they were, because the property owner said it was to protect the garden, it was, quote, a garden fence, which is not in our ordinance, it had to be 10 foot high because of the deer. So then we got into a battle about the decorative part, but that was ultimately resolved.
Fair enough. Thank you.
And
The sheds, if we go back through the code and we decide to amnesty some of these,
Yes.
if you're going back and he's proven that he built it there 20 years ago,
Right.
that was a 10 by 10 shed. So if he's.
But
Not
the-
necessarily. He might have built one bigger without a permit.
But by code and law, it was a 10 by 10. It only went to 144,
Within the last 4 or 5 years. I think,
5, 6 years ago.
But that was
Currently,
throttled by the
that's
the
currently.
state building code, so.
Right, no,
Yeah,
I understand
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if we're gonna do amnesty,
Yeah,
and he's got a 10 by 15,
right.
are we gonna grant him permission to?
yeah,
Well,
I
this-
guess the
This law would
idea,
give them zoning amnesty. They may then still have to get a building permit under the
Right.
state code to make
Right.
sure it meets the
You
state
mentioned
code
that, right.
requirements,
so if it
which is
doesn't,
more for the roof structure and things
if
like
it
that.
meets the state code requirements of the size, then obviously the amnesty wouldn't be a problem.
Right.
All state codes.
Right.
Right.
So I think that we shouldn't go above and beyond to allow what is not allowed from New York State. That seems reasonable.
So I remember when we had this discussion the first time, one of the things that came up, before we grant amnesty, Scott, I think, suggested that, or somebody on the board, that the neighbors be notified.
Yes, yeah.
And that's very important because there are some new constructions that they do have sheds, and we want to make sure that everybody that is close by is aware that this is going to happen.
But- But is this like a blanket amnesty?
This
Do
won't
I
cover
understand this
recent
correctly, that
construction.
if you do this amnesty, it's like a blanket?
No,
or
they
are
they
gonna-
have to
each
come, they have to
one
come
has to
forward,
come?
right.
No, each one has to come,
And as
right.
part of that, then we can
register
notify
it.
the neighbor?
Correct.
If we're going to be afforded that opportunity?
Correct.
Okay.
I'd say there's gonna be some type of fee. I mean, it's gonna be, because you're gonna have to mail all those neighbors.
Yeah, well, we'll have the appropriate fee, we'll come up with a table, we'll have to have a public hearing to draft.
Yes, the law has to be
So
drafted
we could
and-
put that in the law, and if, for a fence though, what I was also thinking, what is there a state code requirement for for the height?
No.
No. What about decoration? That's just our.
It's all local
That's all
regulation.
local regulated, okay.
So how are we going to approach that? Is that still going to be the same, or that's going to be
Well,
blanket
that's up to
amnesty,
the, well,
or?
that's up to the board. If we, yeah, we'll have amnesty for that too. For I don't think that we should go over, what's allowed, 6 foot?
Our code, yeah.
Yes.
I don't think we should
In
go
the
over
side or
that.
rear yard.
In the side or rear.
Side or rear yard. The fences in the front yard aren't allowed.
Okay.
So I don't think we should allow something that isn't in our code.
Correct.
But if it's existing and they don't have a permit for it and it's not in conformity with the setbacks, then we'll allow them. They get the amnesty. And get to stay there without taking a ride to the zoning board, basically.
Does
right?
anyone have a feeling about how many years back it should be there before your grandfather?
I was thinking at least 2 years back, my personal opinion. Because you can't just say, okay, last week if you put a fence in,
Right.
you're allowed to
Right.
get amnesty for it.
Well, 2 years back, I don't think will be enough time. I mean, are you being,
No, from 2017 back. But from
If it was there, you could
2017 up,
I think that's pretty generous.
2017
actually,
forward,
yeah.
you had to
Oh, okay.
comply.
Yeah.
You don't get amnesty.
And then the other thing that comes up are the tent sheds, I guess you want to call them.
Like the
Carb-
fabric,
the
but that's not
fabric.
allowed.
Shed
They're
in a
not permanent
box.
structure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Need to be, but we need to just be clear on that.
we have to be clear on that. How does the board feel about those?
Well, our,
Right now, they're being
Right,
dealt
they're
with
temporary
as they're
structures, correct.
they're considered temporary structures, and a temporary structure can only be up for 6 months. And however, some people, and this is probably something we should fix, they'll leave it up for 6 months, take it down for a day, and then put it back up. So it's up, so I think we should just clarify that maybe it's no more than 6 months in a 1-year period or something like that.
Right. Well, that's one thing that we do get a lot of complaints about because they become very ratty and unsightly. So people call and complain about that they don't look good and they're ripping and they're tearing and,
does that have to be on the rear of the house?
I
all
don't know,
that-
being that
What's-
it's temporary, if it speaks to that or not,
What's that?
on those sheds, the
The
temporary.
rear.
I don't think the temporary speaks to
the rear or side of the house, it doesn't speak to that? It
No.
could be in the front
It
yard?
could be, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the other
we-
problem.
So then we
if
gotta
a
relook at
property-
the whole shed thing. Like, how many are allowed per property? How many sheds can I have?
You can have multiple sheds, you only get one without a permit, the rest require a permit, which is, problematic, right?
I think you can have a shed, you can have a pool house, it depends what you want to classify. You can have a
The only,
garage.
the only control there is you can't, there's a lot coverage limit, as if you own an acre, you can't cover more than, I don't know what the percentage is in property with buildings and structures, so that's the only control.
if a property is on a county or state road, do we still have to impose our town laws, or do they have different requirements?
No, your code still conforms,
Supersedes,
correct. You
it's in the
regulate the
town.
zoning. From the county right away back is under your domain.
okay.
Well, if we're doing it, and if we're gonna look at the shed law, shouldn't we limit how many sheds? You have, especially
this
since,
is-
especially since with line item 2 that's coming here, that's not gonna be a shed. It's gonna be a coop. Chicken coop.
For the poultry, yeah.
That's 3.
But this isn't, we're not changing the shed law. We're looking to do a fence and shed amnesty law.
Yeah, but in the same
But you're saying
token,
you
maybe
want
we should
to-
look at the shed
Oh,
law,
okay.
because that would also affect temporary shed.
Yeah, but what happens if someone has like 20 acres and they want to put up multiple sheds on their property?
You can have so many per acre in a lot.
Yeah,
of
you could limit
things.
in this, because we're various zoning districts, so you can limit it in the R1, R2, or R3 zoning district.
And of course, the farms have, they do
No,
not
that's,
have to.
they're exempt, yeah. If it's a regular agricultural farm, yes, yeah.
Yeah, some people like to,
I mean, that's definitely a separate issue on how many sheds and stuff like that, and
Well, that's something we could tweak also, is the shed law. But,
But the
And
amnesty.
the
how
other,
long
the
you're
other
fucking giving
issue
them
that
to
has
come in.
come up in the last few years is enforcement. Once we do this, then there is the enforcement side,
Right.
that we get to a point and then we really have no further where we could go with that.
Well,
I mean-
usually when it comes up during a municipal search or a pre-site inspection, we're not out looking at
No,
sheds
but,
or looking at fences.
you know,
unless
we've
it comes up
had,
through
we've had a
another-
specific issue where something went on and we couldn't really go further than imposing whatever our
Usually, you
sanctions
give
were.
everyone like a year or 18 months to come in,
Correct.
and if they register their shed, then they don't have any problem with it. Or they can at least check it out, make sure it complies, and then during that 18-month period, if they find that they violate a side yard, whatever, they come in, go through the process, neighbors are notified, no issue, boom, it's taken care of, so when they go to sell it, it's not a problem. Or if they go to put a pool in or some other.
You also then have to think about neighbor complains,
Right.
then what, it just gets denied, or is
Well,
there an
no,
appeal- there's an appeal
I would
process
envision
at
the
that
law to
point?
say that if there is a neighbor that disputes the facts, then it would go to the zoning board and they'll decide that, but
if
this
there's
will
no
virtually
dispute.
eliminate
Right.
half the zoning board's agenda.
Right.
So if the case comes up where somebody lives in a property for a long period of time, which we've had an issue like that, the code enforcement has just so much that he could do. If that person is not selling the house for another 50 years, but now you got 20 neighbors complaining about that, we as a town do not have, other than a certain amount of regulations to really, you can't trespass. You can't really require to take it down. If
Well, no,
somebody
it'd be a
stays there.
violation if it doesn't.
Yeah, it'd be a violation if it's
Right.
there.
If we can act on a complaint as well, I mean.
But I agree, you know, but, you know, besides that, there is nothing else that we could do.
Well, if a neighbor complains, makes a formal complaint, and that's a real complaint, not an anonymous complaint, then our zoning administrator goes out there to research it, and if they are not in compliance, they are issued a violation.
Right, but that's, he's got limited powers. I mean,
Right.
if we
Well,
talk,
then he
I
could-
spoke to him, and probably Tom is aware of that too, as far as the code enforcer.
The only one who can trespass on property in this town, not be prosecuted, is this gentleman. 32A of the New York State Town Law exempts the town engineer from trespass in the performance of his duties. So if he or one of his designates goes out and they're in the course of their employment with the town, they can can they go into a house? No, but they can trespass on your
Does he
property.
have a special armor suit?
No, but we have a police department that can aid him.
He's
So-
raised that issue.
No.
I got your back. You keep going. I got your back.
So I think that we should think about possibly having that period of time, 12 to 18 months leeway, and we'll do a campaign on advertising for this, put it on social media, everywhere else. And we'll constantly remind the people during all our meetings to come in if they have fences or sheds that are not in compliance, and that we'll have to come up with some sort of protocol of how they can prove this, right? Either they have like a bill of sale or
Right, or a survey that
picture.
says on, you know, if when they bought the house, they had a survey, so that'll be sealed and dated. and show the
Survey,
shed.
right. What if they had a picture dated?
If
'Cause
it's
some of the
dated by,
photos,
you know, the
the
development.
The camera
company.
has,
Right,
yeah,
right.
it timestamps
Yeah, but
the.
Well, if it's prior to
Date.
2 years, we could use Google Maps. Google Maps will have an updated
In
map.
Google Maps,
going
there's a
years
lot of
back.
things we can do.
That's, that
Now, are you
too.
talking just if I bought it? What if I put the shed on there?
No, any shed that's there.
So it's not just purchase, you purchased it from Scott and he
Right.
had it, I could have put it up there illegally and I can get exempt from it.
Yeah.
That's why I don't, I'd almost go
homemade,
back,
right?
I'd almost go back more than 2 years.
No. It's from 2 years back
Yeah, I know.
for
So if you
unlimited.
put it up 20 years ago, you could be grandfathered.
Right.
30 years ago.
30
I think
years
2
ago,
years,
you could be
2 years is,
But if you only put it up
years is
last year.
is very generous.
2 years is being very generous.
The purpose is to
Oh,
clear
you
up
mean
all these
saying 3 years
violations that
ago.
are
Right.
outstanding.
Well, that's why we're
That's
discussing
why
this.
also, with 2 years, we can clear up all these violations because like they were saying, that takes up half of the time for the zoning
Right.
board.
So if the board desires, we could do 3 years back, from 3 years back and backwards.
But the further we push it back, the more our zoning board will eventually have to deal with.
I guess eventually, but, you know, it's, we have to decide what's fair. I guess.
Okay.
You know, and then in the same token, are you gonna allow, he's bringing in a picture from 15 years ago for a shed, and the shed size at that point was 10 by 10.
Yeah, but no, it's exempt from the current law.
So we're gonna
From the
exempt it
current
from
law.
15. So go
mainly
put
the
another
setbacks,
50 square feet on your shed before.
From the current
Come in.
law, right? The current New York State code. Not if the code 10 years ago was 100 square feet
Right.
was allowed. Now it's 144. We're going with the 144.
Right.
So that would be the maximum size.
Yes.
That can be,
Allowed. Because 10 years ago, if they put it up and the law was 100 square feet, that's what he's getting at.
Yep.
That we shouldn't allow it. No, we're just going to say a blanket from the New York State code as of 2019. Right?
Right.
Okay.
So you could clear up a lot of problems with your fences and sheds, Peter, and everything else you have going on over there. So what we'll do is we'll set a date for a public hearing, and we will draft the law, which I'll, of course, give to the board, and then we'll discuss it at the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay? And number 2, peddler's permit. So, the peddler's permit has been coming up many, many times. This is a permit where people come door to door to your homes. This doesn't include the stationary peddler's permit that we have some in our business, in our hamlet, and a couple other places in town, but this is for people soliciting in your homes. This has become also problematic. A lot of people don't like that. They are knocking at their doors and asking them for services and sales. So the law that we have currently doesn't give the town, our town police department, any, it gives them some teeth, but it's the wrong way. Is that correct, Tom? Can you explain what it is right now that if somebody's in violation of the permit, of the peddler's permit law, they will get a misdemeanor now?
No, a violation, but a fine of up to $250.
The current law?
Oh, the current law,
Yeah.
no, is up to $50.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there,
The current law, the problem we have with is, number one is, over the years, there have been court cases interpreting peddlers' laws, and ours is an older law at the current time, so it's not in full compliance with the current law. It doesn't contain a no solicitation process. This proposed law, property owners can register with the town, and when somebody gets a peddler's permit, they'll be giving a list of every address that has registered with the town clerk that does not wish to have somebody ring the bell, et cetera. If they do, the police are empowered then to, we could revoke that solicitor's permit, we can fine them, we can, take action against them. Right now, we're in a limbo. But it should be clear that this law does not require anyone for religious or political door-to-door. You cannot regulate that because of, various rights everybody has. So it doesn't prevent any religious group from going around to ring bells to talk to people, nor does it prohibit political groups. Any others for sale of products would be regulated by us. It affords the community opportunity to be able to call the town clerk and say, well, first of all, they're supposed to display their permit, but also the town clerk would know who's registered to be around, roaming around the town.
So I know in the current law, it states that you can't, I think you could regulate the sale of products, but a sale of a service is different and doesn't currently include that.
Yeah, there's a lot of
So-
issues that we cleaned up in this.
So it's all been
hopefully.
cleaned up.
Yeah.
Chief, have you read the new laws yet? I know you were a part of making it. Do you feel like that you're able to enforce this now?
so also the town has, like the attorneys described, a do not knock list. And it's actually pretty extensive. And if you do not wish for anybody to come to your home besides political or religious, you could just call the clerk's office or stop in, and they could add you to that list. And if they're violating that, then you have, grounds to call the police, and they can have action against that solicitor.
So the police department would also have that list of do not knock addresses? correct?
Absolutely.
So that they don't have to, from time to time, get in touch with the clerk and says, is this allowed or not?
I don't know how often the clerk updates the police department, but that's very simple to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
she could probably update it
Yeah.
regularly.
I'm sure she does, anyway, yeah.
Should sound weekly.
The clerk and the police chief often discuss
Bump
matters,
into
right?
each other.
Yes. Any other thoughts about that, the peddlers or the solicitation changing the law?
I'm sure many residents will be happy.
Yeah, there's been
Yeah.
a lot of chatter about it
Yeah.
continuously.
And we're not, if you look in the papers recently, most of Putnam County's towns have updated, are right in the process of updating, because it has been a big issue. And this, just so everyone knows, you don't just come in and pay a fee and get a pass or a permit. There is an application, a little background, the police review it. So they have to show they have a sales tax compliance, so kind of make sure legitimate businesses are peddling and not.
So if you don't register,
If you don't register, you're in violation, and the police can deal with you accordingly.
And, go ahead.
this is anybody that sells goods.
Goods, wares, yep.
So
Services.
if I'm mowing his
Services,
lawn,
right.
I own a landscape business, and I'm mowing his lawn, and
That's
I
not-
walk over to ask you,
It
You
could
need to be
I mean,
registered as a
purist, you'd be a peddler. Yeah. Except, I
I'm just
believe,
trying to think of
right,
the people that we're not thinking about. I mean, we know who we're targeting, but I'm trying to think of all the more people that we're affecting.
well, I mean, if you want to get down to it, if somebody mowing is a service, so theoretically, they should be registered.
Correct.
But you know, sometimes there's nothing wrong with that, because sometimes I hear people that pay money and nobody,
Snowplowing,
and nobody
yeah,
comes
quick.
in, well.
I don't think that we're here to come up with ideas to regulate businesses. I think we're here that we're reacting to the public's outcry that they're not happy with something. That's when we act. We don't just arbitrarily make laws to,
No, but I'm just
Yeah, I'm
trying to
just-
say,
you know.
I'm just trying to say all the people that
Right.
could be getting affected.
well,
This really
absolutely.
shouldn't impact
And
them
that's-
unless if they're annoying the residents and then they report it to us. We
That's
wouldn't know
when-
otherwise.
That's when common sense come into play, Pete.
Yeah, so someone
Usually the
mowing,
police department, they use their common sense.
right, absolutely. It's at their discretion. They know, I know nobody wants to cut your lawn, Peter, but It's-
You can't deliver my pizza no more.
it's your fault. So we have a draft, and we will also set the public hearing for this law also. Number 3, the possibility of changing zoning law for poultry. So, Councilman Franco, you want to give a little background on this?
Sure, I've been approached by several constituents about changing the zoning for poultry. There are a lot of people currently who have chickens, and I believe, Tom, do you guys
You
know
need
the exact?
15 acres or more to have chickens.
Right, so,
You need
10,
less,
sorry, 10.
apparently less to have a horse, though.
That's right.
5.
Right, 2 acres for a horse, 10 acres
so
for
it's something
chickens.
that I think that we should review and perhaps change, because it seems a little much for something that a lot of people currently have.
Okay. So that's why we're here to
Yeah.
discuss that. So here was a little regulations that the attorney drafted up. So the definition of a chicken shall be defined as a member of the species Gallus domesticus.
Chicken is fine,
Learn your
but if you want to
biology.
call it the Gallus domesticus, that's,
I might, this is not, just to be clear, we did a little overview,
Gallus
other
domesticus.
communities, what they have.
Right.
And we kind of plucked the best
oh, here we go.
regulations.
Is this from Sullivan County, or?
So this one allows you, you could have 1 chicken
Per
for
tenth of
every
an acre.
tenth of an acre, up to not to exceed 30. And of course, there would be no male chickens.
No roosters.
No roosters.
No
That's
roosters.
it.
That's discrimination.
I
And
know.
it,
I don't
And it
agree with
delved
that.
into
I love roosters.
and then it was, well, except others don't like it at 5:30 in the
Yeah.
morning. And it requires that there be a certain amount of chicken coop per chicken.
That's part of their shed.
Right, which meets the standards for the various animal societies. I don't know if it meets Purdue standards, but, you know,
Now, okay, why?
So a lot of, this book has become more popular to have chickens
Trendy.
because the chickens eat ticks.
Right.
That's one of the
So that
reasons,
was
right?
a large
Also
reason.
for eggs
For
as
eggs,
well.
right, of course, for agrarian, uses, but, it's, really, Peter, the chickens eat the ticks, and people, that's
So, are the
beneficial.
chickens
You gotta
gonna-
have the chickens out on
Here
the
comes the
lawn.
chicken.
The chickens have got to be out on the lawn at that point. And now I'm going to be driving down the road, and your chickens are going to be coming across the road.
To get to the other side.
This would require them,
Slow down and stop.
Okay,
This
so
is
we're
so
not talking
predictable.
that for ticks anymore.
it's not free range, this would be, that they would have to be.
In a coop.
Yeah, it's
But
not-
you could,
Or your
you
property.
could fence in your whole backyard or your side yard, and they can
Okay,
roam
no, you
all
can't
around.
rent
But
the
you need
front
that,
yard.
you need that 10-foot fence, chickens can kind of,
The tenth of an acre, tenth of an acre.
no, but the fence.
10 foot high.
Chicken can't jump 6 feet.
Oh, well, it can't go above 6 feet.
They can't go very high.
Otherwise, you're not in compliance with the zoning code.
The 10
Wow,
acres,
We're gonna have a 6-foot atrium over your whole backyard
this
now.
is something.
Tom, the 10 acres for a rooster would be a sound barrier, is that what it is, or?
Well, most places, I mean, even the problems we've had here in the town when people have applied, actually, some residents have applied to the zoning board for a variance because some of them claimed a medical purpose that they needed to have their own. But most of the complaints to the neighbors always centered around two things. Number one, the rooster. So then people would say, well, we'll keep them in the barn until after 8 o'clock or whatever, and that doesn't really work. And secondly is what Peter brought up. The complaints have been that the chickens come out into the road and
Right.
aren't kept in an area, on the
Neighboring
property.
towns also have the ban on roosters as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. So,
We're in Wickeby right now. Not today, but they were driving up there, and there was a whole flock of them out there on somebody's front lawn.
What about smells? What happens if they just don't clean their shelters, their coops? Can Scott go
Smell.
in and,
It'll smell.
I know it'll smell, but what if it's
They
like
could be
horrid?
subject to an
dirty
inspection.
jobs.
Pete, you want to be the chicken
So-
inspector?
Yeah, what happens like if there's like a nice breeze going to the neighbor's property every day and,
there is, some of the towns I saw, they actually require you to register that you're gonna have X number of chickens, and then they do refer to a chicken inspector, kid you not,
Scott,
who goes out, I guess, on whatever regular basis, but I mean, that sounds like it's a little too much.
it's a lot.
Well,
yeah.
the police chief, he could possibly moonlight.
And we could put the doors in.
And this would be by permit, right?
We can do that by permit, yeah.
Probably by permit would be best, so we have some
So
sort
you
of
have an
list
idea
of.
if
and then-
somebody calls
Where
and
they
says, my
are.
neighbor's chickens are driving me
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
Well, they're registered, and we know where they are.
And self-contained in a building?
It
They
says
have to
right here,
have
the
a
shelter.
shelter, and they have to have a fenced area.
And the feed containers have to be rodent-proof because of,
There is one type that says 8 feet, it should be only 6 feet.
Now, I have a pre-existing chicken coop in my backyard.
Well,
I do. It's from the 1800s.
Non-conforming?
yeah, pre-existing, non-conforming, exactly. So, well, I think that this is, maybe we might have some people come out for this public hearing.
Yeah, I think there would be.
Okay. So I think we should put it out there. Set the date for a public hearing, have the public come in and discuss their pleasure or displeasure with what we come up with. And in the meantime, if you have any other additions that you want to this, just call the attorney.
Scott,
Tell
they
us,
said
yeah,
they're
that's
talking about
domestic,
ventilation, you're not talking about you want automatic vents, just windows would be good for the
I
shelter,
would
huh?
think, I mean, I'm not the person to
Not
say.
air
kind
How
of-
does
conditioning
that,
or anything,
how does that
right?
determine then? Do we have,
Sorry?
how does that determine what adequate ventilation and light
Right.
is?
We'll have
Is
to
it
do a
like
little
They're
research.
not gonna air condition the place.
there are some, online, there's some approved, I don't know that they're necessarily approved,
Saw it
but
with Tom,
Humane
so-
Society has come out with some guidelines for that.
Fair enough.
Okay.
What happens if your neighbor decides to go out chicken hunting in the middle of the night?
Well, that's.
Coyotes, there's
What
lots of
about
coyotes. in there.
Coyotes and.
Then you call our
everything in the
police
neighborhood?
department and they take care of that. So,
Kuda Matata.
What he has to eat.
I guess. So, So, okay, I think that this could be beneficial. There's been a lot of people, like you said, asking for that, so.
I'm sure they'll have people coming out.
How many acres you got?
We'll have to,
You can put
Obviously, farms are exempt.
So let me just
Yeah,
ask this
obviously.
question. If I want to have 30 chickens and I want to sell eggs, now I'm running a business.
No, a business is not, that's another addition that we'll have to put.
But I'm
That-
just, you know, because somebody who has 30 chickens is going to want to probably sell eggs at some point. So is that gonna be permitted or not?
Or even
Sell them at
less
the
than,
farm market.
When the neighbor calls and says, you know, cars are pulling up, buying eggs.
Yeah, no, you can't, your home is in a business,
All right, so just so that's clear.
Right.
Yeah.
so what are we gonna do if they are selling on their property?
and they'll be in violation. I mean, you can't just do anything and sell anything out of your home now, can you?
No?
So, you
Which will
know,
make them
Just
aware
so
when they
we're-
file
That's
for
why-
the
and
So
permit.
it's clear,
they
yeah.
can't have people come there to buy the egg, but they could sell the eggs, but they would have to transport them and,
Somewhere else.
you know, sell them elsewhere.
right,
They'll make
Yeah.
that clear when they file for a permit.
Yeah.
so.
Have to get FDA approved, so they're never gonna get rid of the eggs.
So we'll discuss this in length, I'm sure, at the public hearing. Okay, number 4, information on drainage easements. So I thought possibly our engineer could give us a description and a little discussion about easements. A lot of people don't know what they are and why they have them on their property, maybe, and maybe not, and how did they get there? They purchased a home with an easement on it, they didn't even know this. So I thought maybe it's best if we could shed a little light onto that.
Okay, well, there's various types of easements that exist. One on the agenda here is for a drainage easement. There's also water easements, sewer easements, utility easements, grading easements, access easements. There's all a variety of type of easements. Basically, what the easement provides for is, I guess, deeded rights to have that utility or drain pipe or water line, whatever it might be, cross through property. And it goes with the property, so even if that property is sold, you know, those rights remain, you know, with that property. Oftentimes, you know, in the case of drainage, you know, we got to get from water from point A to point B, and it may have to cut through somebody's property, an adjoining property to do that. Same could be for a water line, sewer, you know, what have you. So, you know, easements are rather common, especially in these larger subdivisions, the newer ones. But there's drainage easements that the highway holds, you know, through people's backyards, you know, for drainage. So there's a variety of different easements that are out there. Some have been around for a long time, and some are created as part of a subdivision, you know, currently.
So legally, if I have an easement, if I have a drainage easement on my property and I don't know about it, and the town comes and they say, we have to access your property to fix the drainage problem, whatever it is, they can't deny them.
That's correct.
And if they do, what happens?
Well, if they do, then the town has the right to get a court order to force them to stand aside and allow you to exercise your rights within it. They still own the property, but the town, in this case, if it's a drainage pipe, you still own the property, you can do anything on top of the land that is, you wish to do, that's not inconsistent with the right of the town to keep the pipe there. So the problem you have is that many times the pipe's in the ground 25, 30 years, then there's a problem, and people have planted their row of shrubbery, et cetera, and they'll say, I never knew it was there. But the way New York law and all states work is that the easements are filed with the county clerk, so they're a public record, and anyone owning property is given notice in the public record that that easement's there. If you didn't go and research that or know that, that's your problem, but as long as it's properly filed, then the holder of the easement has the right to exercise the appropriate right to dig it up, put the new pipe in, and fix it up.
So, in an example of if they had to cut my driveway to access it, do they have to repair it the way they found it?
No.
No.
They have to put it back to grade, unless the easement provides otherwise, which usually they don't. They have to put it back to grade, but you are deemed to have known the easement was there, so in putting that blacktop over it, you're doing that at your own risk. You have every right to do it because it doesn't interfere with our drain pipe, but when we come through to dig it up, we need not repair
And
that.
that could be a shed, that could be a fence, it could be shrubbery, it could be anything.
Whatever's obstruction is in the easement area.
Now, usually, Board, the town of East Fishkill has a friendly, what we call a friendly neighbor policy. So usually 90%, 99% of the time, if we disrupt something, we repair it the way we found it beforehand, so.
Right, the big problem comes in is that when you have mature shrubs along a property line and you have to dig up the pipe, we have had some times when we were able to get a new easement, move it in so that we didn't have to impact, but that's rare that you have the right to do that or can work it out.
Right.
And then the other situation we were running into in the town with easements is that some people buy homes and there's an easement that traverses not necessarily right through the middle of their backyard, but in their backyard. And then they go and they come in and apply for a building permit to build their pool, and voila, there's an easement. And they have to move the pool or relocate things in the yard. Now, a lot of times, well, I should say in the past, we've had problems with swimming pools because people would come in and apply and say, I'm going to put it outside the back of my house. And the town's position was, okay, if it's right behind your house, it's within your property lines, they didn't require a survey. Well, then what would happen is the contractor would go out to put the pool in, and they would say, oops, the septic isn't where we thought it is, it's really here, so we'll move the pool over 10 feet. By moving it over 10 feet, now they're in the side yard of the property, they're violating the setback, et cetera. So about 4 years ago, we had to implement a rule that when you come in for a permit, you have to provide a current survey of the property, because that will disclose easements, and it can be evaluated. And it also makes sure that where the pool is being put, you're not violating the setback from a neighbor. And so that was the reason that rule was put into place. Some towns have even started that when you come in for a building permit, you have to submit a title search of your property to disclose any easements if you don't have a certified survey. Because a lot of people try to save the expense of the survey. So by saving the expense of the survey, sometimes it costs you thousands of dollars more because your pool's too close and the patio has to be taken out, or you dig up an easement and there's all kinds of problems.
What happens
So-
oftentimes too is that people assume the house is square to the street. Okay, or the front of the house is parallel
right.
to, and sometimes these houses are built at a little bit of an angle. So they eyeball the side of the house and they say, okay, that's all my property back there. But meanwhile, it's going off at an angle, it's going off at a skew. And we see that a lot of times. You know how it wound up there. But a survey would have showed that that's in fact not their property.
Understood.
But people just assume that, oh, the house must be, perfectly square to the street and that's my property line. And that's oftentimes not the case.
So that's another reason why if people ask why we want surveys, it becomes less problematic later on.
And now to answer the next question someone's going to raise, and the most common complaints people say when they buy a home, no one ever told me. My lawyer never told me there was an easement. And part of the problem is the banks almost always required easements up until about surveys up to 15, 20 years ago. Then the banks, as they started to become more competitive with each other, they got a program where, oh, we don't need a new easement, well, you can buy the house. So that eliminated the ability to lay out a survey at the table, closing table, or even while you're earlier in it, and show the people buying it, oh, you got easement here, easement there. So yes, the easements show up in the title search, but there's no way of laying out that easement on a survey if you don't have the survey. So that's a little problematic. Obviously, if you buy a new home, builders have to give you a survey. So that you're starting out, and if you hold on to that and you have it, it will save you a lot of problems, but that would disclose that you have an easement on your property.
Now, some easements in certain areas were swales,
Yes,
and I can't fill that in, correct?
that's correct. That's
Because there's
correct.
certain areas in town that,
Right.
we had a
There
lot
were-
of flooding years ago.
Right, you really have to look at what the easement is for and how it's, was established, yeah.
And then Does the state have an easement? If you're on a state road,
Yes.
does the state have an easement off so many feet from the center of the road into property? Because this one people ask all the time.
This is a very good question, even with town roads, because when most people think, well, my property goes up to the road, so our roads are there. But what people don't realize is a modern right-of-way, say within the last 30, 40 years, is actually 50 feet wide. The pavement is 26, about 26 feet wide. So you have a gap, and you don't know where the pavement is. Is it right in the middle? So it's equal on both sides? Is it over? So a lot of times people plant everything right up to the pavement, but that's really within the town right-of-way. And we have,
Separate from an easement.
yeah, separate from an easement.
No, I
it's
know.
Pure
Right-of-way.
ownership.
That's a right-of-way,
And the
right.
state, the state has maps that show exactly where their property ends. There's no law, but the state has easements also. They can have an easement for drainage, and they also may have acquired rights years ago when the roads were built that just allows them to do certain things. But that's another, and that doves in with what I'm sure the highway superintendent's going to speak about, is that people just assume they can put their mailbox behind the curb, and it's on their property.
You got to put it behind a tree so we didn't get it during the storm.
And when the weight of the snow, it's not the truck never knocks over the mailbox. It's the weight of the snow being thrown at it knocks it over. And then people call and they say, you knocked over my mailbox, come fix it.
Or you plugged my driveway.
Right, but that driveway and that mailbox, 90% of the time, is within that right-of-way distance between the pavement and the end of the right-of-way. Now, there are some roads, and they're the older roads in the town, that we only own pavement to pavement. We don't own anything off the side. So if you're concerned about that, you have to do a little research, because the older roads came to us in a different method than the modern ones for the last 30, 40 years.
I mean, I will make a suggestion, because there's a lot of people moving, new people moving in our community from, down the city. So a lot of this stuff is not familiar to them. The old timers knew exactly what a right-of-way was, what an easement was. They knew exactly what it was. But once they sell, the new people don't know. I would suggest maybe the town engineer and the highway superintendent, they get together and they do a demonstration, different things on a video that we could post on a website and run it. What an easement is, what a right-of-way is, simple stuff. And, the two of you could show different things.
But that's kind of what we're doing.
So we kind of did.
Yeah, but that's a good idea. We could film it.
And actually you film it, show this is what, and from time to time, each crew could come, ask to clean this, because that is,
We run into a lot where drainage ditches behind
right,
certain developments,
right,
people will just start filling them in.
right.
Their lawn clippings, their leaves, their tree branches, and then we come in because the neighbor down the street's getting flooded.
Correct.
And then we have to come in, and they
Right,
don't
so-
realize that they're filling in
Right.
an easement or
Right.
drainage ditch, swales.
Now, if you filled in if I filled in my easement, who's responsible to clean it up? Is the town, or wouldn't it be on me?
If you deliberately filled it and we showed that, we could go and charge you the cost of it.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize, the way everything's getting much more complicated today. And some people might say the regulations are bad, others might say they're good. But one example is, we have many homes in the town that were built that when there are major storms, they get flooded. So because of that, the state's developed the stormwater laws. So nowadays, a lot of the homes that we have would never have been built because they're in the floodplains, the water in the area just can't be absorbed. So what happens now when a house is being proposed to be built, it has to go through a stormwater review. And when you're doing a subdivision, you have to show that all the stormwater that's going to be, the excess stormwater that's going to be created because of the roofs, the pavement on the driveways, so you can't, it's a zero increase discharge. Everything has to be contained on the site.
The rate of discharge.
Right, the rate of discharge has to be, so what happens is, a lot of subdivisions these days, or you see these ponds being, laid out, and there's an easement. And the easement can be held by the town, because the town's responsible to make sure all of these stormwater facilities are properly managed after they're built. So we have an easement, and then there are different ways that they're handled. If it's very extensive in a subdivision, the town board will actually form a stormwater district. And if there's any work that has to be done to keep that system operating, it becomes a charge only to the houses that are benefited by it, that were created because that was built. Other times, the benefit is to everybody in the town, you know, even though it's, maybe the road's on the other side of town from where I live, I support that, they support my road, so it's part of the general town function. So it's getting more and more complicated, so there's different kinds of easements on your property, but obviously when there's a pond, you can't fill it in. Some of them are deep enough that we even have them fenced. And so, and there's all kinds of different agreements, so obviously a homeowner in due diligence should find out why is that big hole there, and unfortunately, a lot of people, when they're selling a house, they just say, oh, no one's ever going to build on that, or, oh, no one ever comes there, you know, don't worry about it. And then 2 months after they move in, Kenny shows up with a whole fleet of trucks to clean it or fix it.
Or our guys come in to mow,
Yes.
get off my property. Well, it's actually a town easement, and we have to maintain this drainage pond, swales. So we run into that also quite often.
Just one thing I might add, whether we want to consider, when we do municipal searches, whether or not we want to report whether there's a town-held easement or not.
Well, I don't know if our records are extensive enough to be readily able to do that. That would be the real issue, yeah.
Well, then they can't say they didn't know there was an easement, that's the only.
What would that do? What would that do, Scott?
Well, when they get that municipal search, and knowing that either there's a violation on the site, because normally that's what they're looking for, a violation, any open permits, it would also tell them, oh, by the way, you've got a town-held easement on your property.
Oh, so if I'm buying a home, if I'm selling my home, the first thing I do is a property search to see if I have any violations.
The buyer does it.
The buyer
does it. That's
Prudent sellers do it in advance.
Right.
So that the buyer
Fix
doesn't.
any
Usually the
problems.
buyer does it, so they see if there's any violations. And then also, we could put proactively, there's an easement, so then they know. So,
Well, I
It's gonna take, that's
I'm
an
a little-
effort on our part.
I think I'd be more comfortable if maybe we add to our municipal searches that you should verify what easements, if any, exist on your property, because I don't want people to get the false sense of security that there's no easement on my property because the town didn't list it, and the town may not have listed it because the easements are recorded with the county clerk, and the town may have it, and I don't know if our records are,
understood.
you know, so I don't want to create a false sense of security.
So, Tom, do the easements show up if I do a title search on a
Yes.
property? They do show
Yes,
up?
yes.
Depends, though.
It
like
will
you
show
said.
up that there's an easement, and you could look at it, and it will tell you water easement and whatever the terms are, and then it will have a meets and bounds description. But if you don't have a survey, you really don't know how that fits onto your
Right.
parcel, you know?
It also depends on the year of the home. Certain homes, like you just said, we might have not notified the proper authorities that there is an easement over there. Could it be that it's
Or no,
not
we-
cataloged properly?
No, it's cataloged in the county clerk's office. but-
Automatically.
But automatically,
No matter
when
what the year
it's
is.
recorded, so when a subdivision's approved, before the map can be filed, all the easements have to be signed and sealed, and then the subdivision map and all the easements get recorded
Correct.
at once,
But
so
what
they're
ab-
on record.
What about a home that was built in 1920?
Well, no, an easement would be on record, but it may not be shown on a map, okay?
So that would not come up.
But
when
we
you
may
do-
not have a 1920 easement here. That's why I would caution that when we
Right.
do a letter, you know,
That's- okay.
the more modern ones, we can look at a subdivision map and quickly tell
Right.
if there's a easement. might be
Okay,
able to
any other comments, questions?
No, but even, maybe put the warning on it.
Just a warning.
This is why I thought we should have a discussion about this, because it's a little,
This
you
is
know.
something that comes up. I mean, I've been personally involved
yes.
in quite a few of these.
But we have a lot of it too.
Yeah, so, I mean, sometimes I have to call the highway superintendent, he comes in, and kind of, in the past, we kind of explained, and we walked through the property. If you go up Brandy Lane, on top of the hill, they have pipes that run all the way from up there, through the whole development, down Hillside Lake Road. And they go through backyards, and people don't even know. These are huge pipes. I believe they're 24-inch,
Yeah,
maybe
we
bigger.
actually changed a few of those over the
Right,
course.
so
of
I've been involved up there where I've been called and I said, okay, and we walked the property. Now, not with Kenny, but with the previous highway superintendent. And I think like it would be a great thing if we could put a video, you know, explaining exactly so people get familiar with some of the stuff,
That's a good suggestion.
you know? Because when it happens, if he goes with a crew and he's got to deal with all the stuff, explaining, and then they come to the town lawyer, it becomes a mess,
Well, we-
and it slows down the whole
What
process.
the lawyers gets into, the
We do
mess.
Yeah, no,
we do
that's-
give people plenty of notice.
Dirty
you know,
jobs.
Right,
You know, we're gonna be coming in, we're gonna be changing the pipe. If you have any obstacles in our way, can you please, most people are good.
right.
They understand.
The other thing that you might think about, Ken, is once you go and clean these pipes, you could put a sticker there with a little small label explaining what their pipe is, you know, not in extensive words, so that whoever goes there knows in the future, you know.
Yeah, we've started that with the wetlands on the newer subdivisions, on the
Right.
100-foot setbacks. The planning board's been trying to come up with different
Demarcation.
ways to demarcate
Right.
the boundary, either split rail fence sometimes, or rocks or anything. We have found that the smaller signage things unfortunately disappear.
Right.
So, you know,
This
you
is
almost
true.
have to put a
Well,
concrete.
I said small.
It's
so
a
it
great
wouldn't be-
idea, I
It would
agree.
be very
you know.
cost,
Yeah,
you know,
Effective, yeah.
plastic like
yeah.
this, put on the ground with a stake would make them aware that, you know, from time to time, we're gonna come back and
No, I agree
they're
with you,
aware.
yeah.
So that if a new owner is there, you know, they will call him, why is this here?
Right.
And, you know, a quick
Well, maybe on
explanation.
the notices, if we do on the departmentals, that there's a notice about easements, then this video maybe could be a link that people could,
Correct.
you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, ultimately, they'll say their lawyer, Ned, they gave them the sheet.
Of course, it's always the lawyer's fault.
Always.
But this will help, I think, you know. I mean,
Absolutely.
I personally didn't know about easement until recently.
Until Kenny
So-
started digging in your backyard.
Well,
And he really didn't have an easement. Nick was just trying to have some fun for Halloween.
well, we'll do a video with, to get information out there to the public, and if anybody has questions about easements, please call Deputy Supervisor Cassidy. He'll answer them all for you. Next is Highway 101, I'm calling it. The highway superintendent's here tonight to give a little information about what's going on with the highway department as of now. People have questions about plowing and salting, and I thought maybe it would be a good idea if, Kenny, you came in and gave us some information.
So a big, winter time we have with our snowstorms that we've been getting and our ice storms, we've had a lot of concerns with street parking. A lot of people don't realize that from November 1st to April 15th each winter, there's no street parking. So Matt and I, the chief, normally will give the people a warning, but we do get some repeat offenders. So we're trying to get it out there that even cul-de-sacs are streets. Because they tend to say, well, it's unparked in a cul-de-sac. But a cul-de-sac is still a street, and we still have to come in there and push that snow. So that's one of our issues we have during the snowstorms. Another one is the mailboxes, which we were just talking about, and the plug driveways, which we do have a right-of-way off the pavement. So a lot of people don't realize that.
About, I don't think a lot of people realize you're not supposed to push snow across the road.
Yes, right. So the off-street parking, that's, it's a vehicle and traffic. It's 177, Article 177-2, which is a law that does exist. And also our other, for pushing the snow across the road is number 129, Vehicle Traffic Safety Law, which does not allow shoveling the snow into the street, snow blowing the snow into the street, plowing it, because we get a lot of calls. You guys came through and now the neighborhood cleared their driveways and now we need you back. Well, we just did 24 hours and now the guys are going home to get some sleep. And things freeze up at night. Matt calls us up and says, guess what? We've got neighborhoods that are slippery and now we have to come back in, and come back out, and a lot of it is due to people pushing the snow across the road, shoveling into the road, so on.
I think some people leave their cars, I've seen it in the road, so that the plow guy can plow the driveway.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, you got all the snow left out in the lane for everybody who's got to drive by.
Right.
You know, it's just some consideration, you know?
And we
Were you
get,
saying that they plow it and leave it in the street, or they plow it and put it
they'll
across on the
plow
other
it,
side?
put it across the street, put it in the neighbor's yard.
It's
Yeah.
never completely clean after they plow it across.
Right, and after we had just come through,
roads
plowed
with
and
snow
salted the
across
entire
It's a town
road,
right away.
now we gotta come back and pretty much clean everything back up again.
But you cannot, as a plow guy, you can't plow the driveway going out and take it across
Correct.
a road. It's got to stay on your
To
property.
the town right away, to 10 feet on the other side of the road.
How about that? So it's illegal to plow the snow into any road?
Now,
Town road,
Town
county
road,
road,
state
state
road,
road, any road?
now, my question there would be for either you or Matt, probably Matt. If I own the house and he plows my driveway and he pushes the snow out there, who gets the ticket? For pushing it across? What if you don't know who he is? Can you come to my house because you know the snow come out of my driveway?
You're going to give them up then.
Right.
We've been
We've been pretty
Somebody's getting
lenient,
that
Matt and I, we try to
know,
give everybody a warning.
The funny thing is,
We try to warn you
Okay,
first,
then
come
now
on,
we got
you know,
you.
guys,
I-
this is the way it
I
is,
drove
please
home from
be
Poughkeepsie
compliant.
last night, or yesterday, and I had to brake because a plow truck was coming out of a driveway. So I hit the brakes and I watched he went back in. I looked in my rearview mirror, you know who was behind me? A cop. And he waved to the guy and kept right on going.
That wasn't in East
Wasn't East
Fishkill.
Fishkill.
Plowing snow
I
across the
said I
road
was
or
in
just backing up?
It was not in East
Plowing it
Fishkill.
across the
He was plowing straight across the road. Came right up, shot right across the road, right in front of me.
Okay, well, the most complaints are by your plow, Peter, on your truck. Would the
Red
highway
truck with the Boston Red Sox sticker on it.
the highway superintendent continue?
It was a New England fan, they knew each other.
So, you know, Matt and I try to give everybody warnings, but the repeat offenders, we're starting to get to know who you are. And we're not gonna keep tolerating it, because it does cost us money, and it costs us man-hours to go back and constantly clean the stuff up. So if we can issue a ticket after we catch you a few times, we're gonna issue a ticket. So, also garbage cans during snowstorms. People wanna put them right out on the street. They cannot be out on the street. They need to be up on the curb or behind the curb. Because then when we come by, well, my garbage can got knocked down, we get a lot of that. Well, we purposely are not out there knocking garbage cans down like some people think.
Or the mailboxes,
Or the
right,
mailboxes.
right.
They need to be set back. There's rules and regulations for where they should be.
Yeah, but what I don't understand is, when you have a home built, you go to the post office to apply to put your mailbox in, and they tell you that you can put it, and they say you could put it close to the
It
road.
has to be a certain height.
It is allowed.
You're allowed to put in the easement.
It's for the convenience
The
of the
easement.
postmaster and the resident. We have no objection if they place it in a right-of-way. But that does not make us responsible
Right.
for any subsequent damage to that.
Okay? So it's as for convenience.
We
So I live on,
lost a few.
yeah, I live on a state road, my neighbor and I,
Lost one, too.
13 years, we lost 5 mailboxes each.
I know who caused my road.
5.
And the state writes you a check?
No, the state.
Never not once,
Never.
right? Never not once.
I had my wife call once because she was mad.
If you move to Wappingers, the town will give you
Yeah,
a
the
new
town
ma-
pays for it in
The
Wappinger.
town will build a new mailbox every time.
Wappinger.
A $6.99 Home Depot special.
Yes,
In
they,
a 5-gallon bucket with a little post. That's what they'll do for
yeah,
you.
they give the the $10 mailbox. So if you have a $300 mailbox, they bring.
$300 mailbox,
Not
you
me,
got a
no.
problem.
We've had
Well, that's
claims
what
for
people do.
$1,200.
Yes, copper mailboxes.
Yeah,
Gee.
if you do, then, and they break it down, if you're in Wappingers, they'll give you a $5.99 mailbox. I'm sorry, go ahead,
Special.
Kenny.
It's more than Kenny's gonna give you.
Go ahead, Ken.
All right, some of the other concerns were, you guys came through, you plowed, but the road is not clear yet. Well, we've had a lot of, the last 2 storms, we've had cold temperatures. The storm prior to the last one, We were down to 0 degrees at night. Salt does not work at 0 degrees. When the sun comes out and helps, it'll start to work. After 17 degrees, the effectiveness of the salt slows right down. So give it some time to work, drive with caution. We have come by, the roads are treated. We have over 214 miles of road. We are the biggest town in Dutchess County with the most amount of roads. So we are coming. Give us time, give it time for the material to do what it has to do. And that, we do get those complaints. Well, the truck was through, but the road's not bare yet. When it's cold, when the temperatures are extremely cold, it's going to take a little longer. When the sun's out and it's above 20 degrees, it's going to melt off real quick. So,
Gotcha.
And when
give
you
it
have
time.
freezing conditions and, you've been there and now it freezes during the night, is it advisable, to use more sand and salt to have traction, or?
we will use, first time through, we'll give it the sand for sure. So there's always a grip. Once the salt melts, people don't realize that either, is once the salt melts, it's gone. The sand will stay. And even in the evening, if things get bad, Matt and I are in constant contact. His officers will call myself or my deputy or one of the foremans, and we will come out at night and address it. So we work together to make sure that we don't have those really bad spots. But again, it does happen. It's winter time. With all the rain we've had and the runoff, you're going to get black ice. So we've been out filling the potholes. We know that they're bad, especially after plowing. We're filling them with the coal patch, but we're trying to at least take out the blow of the serious pothole. It's not a permanent fix, but it's temporary till spring, when we can go out and start really doing the hot patch again.
That said, if anyone has any complaints, still feel free to reach out to the supervisor's office, any of the council members, or even
Absolutely.
your office, and
Absolutely.
we'll try to address that too.
Yep. And we will be
Social
doing a little
media.
extra paving this year. You guys have granted us we've gotten to another 100,000 for our paving budget. So we're looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to some more spring-like weather soon.
Yes.
So that's basically what's going on. A lot of tree work when we can, when we're not out plowing snow or getting ready for storms. We're doing tree work, we're doing some drainage repairs, easement work if we can get in there to work, detention pond mowing, stuff like that in the wintertime. We do keep going if it's not snowing.
So, and we have been having ongoing conversations with the highway superintendent and the town engineer about the conditions of our roads. So, as the highway superintendent said, we are the largest town in Dutchess County, over 214 miles of town road, and it is a very costly endeavor, and we are in a very poor condition for our infrastructure of roads. We have increased the budget another 100,000, the last budget we did, and we'll continue to increase it as much as we can. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be enough. We are going to have to come up with another plan, another procedure. We're discussing it right now on what we could possibly do to have a major East Fishkill infrastructure program. Revitalization. We are in dire need. Our roads are the town's assets, so we have to maintain it. Just like you maintain your home, we need to maintain our roads. So that is the largest complaint that we do get, are the conditions of the roads. And you can also call the deputy supervisor to complain, not only my office, but we are coming up with a plan to try to facilitate a quicker fix.
A lot of our
Quicker
roads have
fix.
become cut-through roads, too. They're not the same back roads. We have a lot more traffic on some of these side streets. Fishkill Road, Lake Walton Road, Old Sylvan Lake Road, Creamery Road, these roads have all become thoroughfares now.
Right.
So they get a lot more use and a lot more truck abuse, so we're doing what we can. Like, we talk a lot, all of us, and we're trying to come up with a good plan on how to maintain them,
Yes.
keep up with it.
Well, thanks for all the hard work you guys have been doing. We
Yeah,
We
appreciate it.
appreciate it. The guys really do, and the ladies. We have a few ladies, too, who go out and plow snow as well, so.
Okay, great. Any other questions, comments for the highway superintendent? No? Thanks, Kenny.
No problem,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Always a pleasure working with you guys. We're all working good together, I feel.
Yes, we are.
Police
The whole
department,
board.
fire department, town board. It's a pleasure.
Even the town attorney.
So that brings us to open discussion. Anybody wish to make any comments? Discuss anything?
I just have one little thing that I forgot to mention at the last meeting. I had received a piece of mail. I don't know if I got it myself personally, but I did share it with the town board
Yes.
and the town supervisor. The person that wrote this letter was a senior, apparently did not sign the note, but actually asked me, you know, if I'm a conservative, and what do I think about the fact of the budget still addressing some raises, even though we stood under the tax cap. I mean, this is, you know, the person that wrote the note made some good points, but at the same time, I want to say that, you know, personally in the past, I believe 2 years ago, I did not vote on the budget, but since the new administration, we are really, before addressing increases in tax, we usually stress and go over with a magnifying glass to save whatever we can. So I feel for the seniors, and I always bring this up. You know, the seniors in our community are, when we raise taxes, the ones that are most affected by small increases, but we are working together really to minimize the impact. And I want to assure that, you know, this town board is really not for spending and taxing, but it's for reducing costs and addressing all the issues.
If I can add to that too, they mentioned that Dutchess County has not raised taxes again this year. They kept it at a flat rate. But that's also because the county has a much larger contingency budget than we do. I believe they're sitting around $40 million. And Mr. Comptroller, where are we at currently with our?
We have a $2 million fund balance.
And where would you feel comfortable if we were, where should we be sitting currently?
Probably 2.5 to 3 million.
Okay, so that's another reason why the county has been able to keep a flat tax over the past couple of years. They have a lot more money saved up than we do.
But Councilman, I'll add to that. Do you know the reason why they have more money in their coffers than we do?
Sales tax.
Sales
Is that correct,
tax,
Mr.
yes.
Supervisor?
That's right. Over the past 7 years, is it, Mr. Comptroller? 6 years?
7 years, yeah, I think so.
So we are in the $2 million ballpark of how much we have possibly given back, not received from the county.
We lost our share of contribution in
The
sales tax.
accumulated lost revenue.
Accumulated lost revenue is about
It was
almost
about
$2 million.
$360,000 a year, yeah.
So the county has has other revenue streams that we don't.
Correct.
And they also take more from us than we can take.
Well-
Or receive. So in saying that, they built up a $40 million war chest, and they fixed their problems on the backs of all the towns. Now, obviously, it's their right, but what the author of the letter pointed out that they had a 0% increase, but what do you get? What do you receive from the county? What services do you get for the for your tax dollars? If you look on your tax bill, there's a line that says county and town, and the county is larger, they collect more than we do. But with our tax line, we provide you with full-time police department, all the departments in the town hall, clerk, assessor, building department, engineer, attorney, town board, recreation, everything that we do is from that line. So we provide a tremendous amount of service for the tax line, and we are, I believe, the second lowest tax rate in Dutchess County. And to have a full-time police department with the second lowest tax rate in Dutchess County is really unheard of. So Yes, it is hard, and I agree with the councilman. For some people, it is hard to make ends meet, and we do take that into consideration. But we have a big town to run, and we have a lot of road to fix, and we have a police department to help provide safety for our residents. So we do provide a lot of service. We do.
And the other thing, I know that you have mentioned entertaining a discussion on an infrastructure and roads. And again, we know who's got the most money. And if somebody picks your pockets constantly and does not give anything back, we are really on the short end of the stick. And I hope then when we have that discussion, that we invite some of the county leaders to sit at a table and listen to the realities of what we have to deal with on a daily basis.
We could take them on a drive on some of our roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
In their cars, not.
Yeah.
and you know, I have to say that it's not an East Fishkill problem. You drive in Wappinger, some of the main roads, you take some of the back roads, it's a mess. So we're all facing the same problems. But East Fishkill, because of, you know, the way that our losses, I think, account for a lot more than what everybody else's could account for.
And,
So the couple of $1 million could have come in handy now to give to the highway and pave a lot of roads.
Absolutely.
So, you know, but having said all that and shared some of this information with the community, I deeply care for the seniors, and I believe that everybody on this board does. So, again, thank you for the message, but we're here to serve you, and we want to make sure that, you know, we take care of the seniors.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing it up, because it's important that the public knows, and, you know, you think about all the lost revenue and what we could do with it, it's tough, and we have to make tough decisions sometimes. We are in the process of doing a renovation here at Town Hall, and we put a new roof on, and we were renovating all the offices. We put new plumbing in the bathrooms. You know, the building needed it. It's over 60 years old. It never had a renovation. I'm sure everybody who owns a home does renovations to your home. That's your largest asset. What happens if you neglect it for 60 years? It's not going to be worth very much now, is it? So I had to cut our recreation budget to provide the funds to do this renovation. So, you know, it isn't that I'm always going to the taxpayer. I am looking within the budget. I am cutting in areas where I think we can, and we make the best what we can. So, and I appreciate the board's help.
The other side of the coin, Nick, is that hopefully with the economy taking off, our revenue will increase. I mean, the comptroller probably could share that our revenues have slightly increased in the last few months, right?
Well, yep, our mortgage taxes increased noticeably in the year 2018, and we're hoping that that will continue
Continues.
for 2019. We'll see.
Right.
Yes, some of our other revenues have been showing promise, so. And just to clarify one thing, it wasn't second lowest in Dutchess. We did a survey of 18 comparable towns in Dutchess and Putnam. We didn't include some of the real small towns in Dutchess.
Okay.
So it's the second lowest among, I would say, comparable municipalities. But amongst municipalities with a full-time police department, we are about half of the next lowest. So just to.
So substantially lower
Substantially
with
lower
a
than-
full-time
yeah.
police department. And, you know, that I give a lot of kudos to the town boards before us also to keep, you know, being diligent with the tax dollars, because, you know, safety is a major priority for the residents of East Fishkill, but it's costly. But, you know, it's something we can't do without.
You know, one of the big items that we want to share with the seniors and all constituencies is that, you know, we have a highway superintendent that finally now, anytime that he's looking for new equipment, he'd rather go and search for used equipment. Because in the past, our new equipment, some of the trucks were over $200,000. So right now, we bought, the last truck you bought, how much do we pay for that?
We got from the state, ready to go on the road for $12,000.
Right. So can you imagine getting a truck where we were paid 240,000, you got it for 12,000? Those are the savings, those are the real savings that we're implementing. I mean, I have to give a lot of credit to some people for coming up with these ideas, and we want to continue on that path. So, I mean, look, I'm very frugal with spending taxes, and if I saw that this board and the highway supervisor was not doing the due diligence, I would be the first one to say something. I mean, I could assure the community that we are on track. I mean, you're not going to see a big change overnight because we, I believe, coming from 10 years of, maybe more, right, Mark? 10 years of bad economy.
Yeah.
So,
Using the mortgage tax example,
Right.
you know, back in 2009, I think we were receiving about 2.2 million in mortgage taxes then for the last, not including last year, it was around 800, 900,000.
correct. So that's another big loss, and that's the money that we use to really run our services. So, again, thank you again to the highway superintendent. I want to really make sure that, you know, we give credit where credit is due, and he deserves the credit. I hope that we continue on this path.
And a lot of it too is working with all you guys. Now Scott brings up good ideas, Nick and I bounce ideas off Scott. And, you know, the auctions was all three of us, I think, talking about those. The Town LaGrange, we also purchased a truck from Town LaGrange, so working with other highway departments as well, it helps. Every little bit helps.
Right, and
You know?
we have a thriving town, we really do.
Yeah, we do.
And, you know, we have a great senior program and, you know, great recreation program, you know, just to
And-
mention.
And the other thing, if the governor doesn't keep on taking away from the small community like ours, cutting the, what is it called?
AIM funding.
The AIM funding,
AIM
yeah.
funding.
Again, you know, we're getting hit, everybody's in our pockets.
Right.
And, you know, we don't want to come in your pockets, but, you know, it would be nice if somebody picks up the phone and calls Albany and call your representatives and tell them, you know, that this is not the right thing to do to the town of East Fishkill in particular, that's all.
Well, the governor now has $3 billion in subsidies that was supposed to go to Amazon, so East Fishkill will gladly take some of that.
Red Wing did much better last year, right, than in the past, the park.
Red Wing does,
Yeah.
well, it almost is self-sufficient.
We did quite a few improvements. People were very happy with the parking lot and the painting of the
We've added a
building.
lot of things.
Yeah, we do what we can. We try to stretch the dollars. Thank
A lot
you
of
for
it we
bringing
do
that up,
in-house.
Councilman.
We've been doing a lot in-house, keeping it.
Oh, absolutely.
what we've been trying to
I
do.
couldn't have done this renovation without your support. We save a tremendous amount of money. Your guys are here constantly doing most of the work for this renovation. I appreciate it.
And the renovations aren't just benefiting the town board and the supervisor, it's for all the employees that work for a town. Like, think of each one of us going back to our day jobs and working in an old ratty office that's, you know, the roof's leaking and the bathrooms are outdated. Really, it's also for our employees. They're the number one focus for this, too.
And plus, when things are old and you have to fix them, they cost more. So if you maintain it properly, but something that's 60 years old, it's hard to maintain. It needs to be replaced,
And things start leaking and
Right.
causing more damage.
right? Anybody else have any comments?
Oh,
Yes.
just, I want to wish happy Valentine's to my wife and all the wives in the community, all the ladies in the communities, happy Valentine's. While you're having a good time, we're over here doing the due diligence for the community.
Just to add to that, happy anniversary to my parents.
Ah, happy
Married on
anniversary.
Valentine's Day.
I just want to thank all of you guys here on the town board for coming to the Super Bowl Wingfest for Dutchess County 1013. That really meant a lot to all of us. And also our police chief, Matt Orsino, for showing up as well. We raised a lot of money that night. It was a lot of fun. Thanks to Councilman Cassidy for bringing your entire clan. We really appreciate that.
Right
Also-
team won, too.
Yes, again.
We
with
knew
that.
that was coming.
Happy Valentine's Day to everyone, especially my beautiful wife, Tara, and of course, my darling little angel, Jenna.
Thanks for putting out your red tie, too. Point that out to her.
I didn't get the email.
Wait, I'm trying to block him here. It's okay.
That's all right.
Anything, Peter?
No, I talked about the highway department, but he's waiting for the weekend for the snow again. He's waiting for Saturday and
I
Sunday.
think we're gonna
It's a
get
big-
by, I think.
No, I don't
Tuesday
think
and
it's-
Wednesday.
Come
I
on.
don't think it's getting by us. That storm that's in
No?
California is supposed to be here by the weekend.
It's gonna go out
And I
to
just
sea.
looked at it.
It's gonna go out to sea.
You hope, I hope too. California's getting hammered right now.
Well,
We'll see.
Happy Valentine's
best.
Day.
We'll be ready.
well, happy Valentine's Day to all, and Tom, thanks for wearing the yellow tie.
You got it.
Our next town board meeting is February 28, 2019. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, thank you very much.